So the title of today's session is How to Set Up Your Data Visualizations. Now, in the last session with Andrew, he talked about the source page within Curator and how it was, within Learning Locker. And he mentioned that this page is the access point, for want of a better word, of all of your xAPI data flowing into Learning Locker. He showed us how we could look at those statements, how we could start to get some information from it. But he did say that in order to automate that record gathering and that data visualization, we would look at data visualizations in another webinar, and that's exactly where we are today. So we've covered a little bit of groundwork previously. This is where we're going to start to build the visualizations out. So let's just remind ourselves what we're going to look at. Andrew's going to talk us through the various types of visualizations that are available and what might work better from one type of data to another type of data, from one type of presentation to another. He's going to talk us through those. He then, of course, is going to go into Learning Locker. He's going to share that with us, and he's going to give us an insight into how to actually build out these visualizations. If we don't get the chance to look at the Online Help Centre in person, you will get a link to the Online Help Centre at the end of this session. So one way or another, we're not going to just leave you hanging with this. We will direct you towards where you could jog your memory and get some extra help and information. And then right at the end of the session, you'll have the opportunity to download the Learning Technologies Manager's Guide to xAPI, which I suspect many of you already have. And I'm also going to direct you towards some additional reading that you might be interested in and around this subject. Kathy, I can see that you've just joined us, and Masakazu has joined us again. I don't want to hold the flow of things up, but I just want to just take a moment just to orientate you. In the top left-hand corner of your screen, there is a meeting button. If you click on that meeting button, you will see an option called Audio Setup Wizard. If you want to go through the audio setup process, and then you can mute and unmute your microphone using the microphone button, which is roughly in the same area, top left-hand corner of your screen. So I'm just going to hand over to Andrew very shortly. Kathy and Masakazu, if you want to go through that process, let me know in the chat panel when you've done that, and I'll know that you've caught up with the rest of us. So, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind sort of talking us through the different types of visualizations that are available, and then, of course, building some of those visualizations for us, that would be really appreciated. I'm going to change the screen layout so you can share your screen, and maybe you'd just like to give us a little intro from yourself. Over.
Right, let me just get this set up. Okay, can you see that fine?
Yeah, we've got your source page at the moment.
Fantastic. Okay, so in the last session, question here. In the last session, we went over the data set that I've got loaded up for this demo. So that's a fake organization called Acorn Corp, after Nutmeg in the top left there. And they've trained some salespeople. So those salespeople have completed some courses, a bunch of sales courses here. After that, they have called a bunch of people at different organizations. And eventually, after they've called enough people, they've managed to create some leads with those companies. So if we dig into a particular organization, we want to look for Sherwin-Williams there. You can see the whole process. Eventually, Brickshaw McDougall there has created a lead, following everybody calling Gloria Gonzalez over and over again. Right. So, brief overview of the data. Let's start making some visualizations. There's a couple that we're not going to cover today. So we're not going to cover journeys or correlations because they're a bit more in depth, but we'll go over the rest. So the first one is the bar chart. We generally use this to make a leaderboard of what things are the most popular. So this one is going to be ordered by whichever one has the highest score. So by default, all the graphs are set to look for the last 7 days of data. I don't have any data in the last 7 days. So I'm going to drop this back to look at the last 6 months. As it's set up at the minute, it's set to look at hour on the x-axis. This is grouping all of my statements into time of day, the hour of day, and tell me which one is the most popular. I can see that 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock has the most statements. Not particularly useful visualization. I might want to group this by something a bit more informative. So I'm going to group it by person. Now, on the x-axis, I'm seeing the total unique number of statements. So with no filters on, this is just a display of activity. I can see who has done the most things in total. Not most things per day. In the last 6 months, Builder Echo has been the most busy, made the most calls, completed the most courses, whatever that is. If I want to see specifically who had made the most calls, I can switch over to this series tab here, and I can add a filter. I can say that I want to see only the called statements. And then Ben Chin jumps to the top, because he's the one that did the most calling. If I want to look at more than one thing on the graph, so I want to just look at called statements, but also leads, I can add an extra series. So I've got my called series here. Switch to this one. I'll put created in. Give this a label. I'll give this one a label. And here we go. Phil's back on top because he's got the most statements. Created 6 leads, called 85 customers. You can get a brief look at the ratio of how many calls it took each person to create leads and how busy people have been overall. So, really quick snapshot there. That's not the only thing we can group by. So here we're just counting statements. I'll delete these to show me everything. I might want to take the performance in a different area. So I'm going to look at the average of their scaled scores. So if we jump back to the statement, it's good to know where all of this stuff comes from, because everyone's statements are going to be different shapes. You're going to get them from different sources, and there's no particular standard for where you store your stuff in your statement. Everyone's free to do as they will. Generally, if you are looking at the outcome of a course, that stuff's going to be in the results section. So here we've got statements, timestamp. Oh, I need to get the right sort of statement. Completed. So down here we've got result, and inside result is score. And the score has scaled, which is 0 to 1, and then the raw, the maximum, and the minimum. The scale is a good thing to use to compare between different courses, which might have different max scores.
So what's interesting to see here, Andrew, is that despite that statement or that 3-part statement looking very simple, you know, Andrew logged into Learning Locker, actually below there's a hell of a lot of data that's sat beneath that very, very simple sentence at the top. It's quite a staggering amount of data that sits underneath that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and it's going to depend on how your statements are produced, what the application is that's making them, as to how much you have. But generally, it's pretty flexible. You can get almost anything in there. Right, so back here, looking at the scaled results, grouping it per person, we see that Timmy Childs has the best results on any test. James Lindbergh following him shortly afterwards. If we're only interested in a particular course, then we can filter down the what to some of the courses. There we go. Juan performed the best on uncovering selling opportunities. So that's leaderboards. Let's go to column graphs. So column graphs are very similar to leaderboards, but they're generally in order. So where leaderboards ordered things by score, by whatever the count was, so put the highest at the top. Column graphs order things by whatever's on your y-axis. Your x-axis. So this is currently giving us not very useful information. Let's switch it to day of the week. Well, my test data generated without much regard to weekends. Maybe that's accurate. Maybe it's American test data and everybody works on the weekend. So it could be classic sales organization where Sunday is a pretty busy day. People are pretty tired on Monday, but they pick it up on Tuesday. This is totally fake, so there's going to be no real patterns in here. Get the idea. You can do almost exactly the same stuff with this graph as with the bar chart. The only difference is that we're ordering on the x-axis instead of on the y-axis. So again, I can add a particular series. And then I can choose to display them side by side or stacked. And you can give labels to your series as well. Line is very similar to column, but it's for showing continuous data. So where column groups things into buckets, so a bucket per day or maybe a bucket per course, line gives us continuous change over time. So the x-axis on a line graph is always going to be time. And we can then see number of statements, score, different activities per day. So if I grouped by statement.object, this would show me the variation in different things that people do per day. I'm counting the number of different objects. Whereas here, if I have statements, I'm just looking at the general activity over time. And again, you can add extra series if you want to compare different sources. So say I had two LRSs, two stores set up. I could make one series for each of the stores and show those competing against each other. Counter is for just showing a big number. So whatever the number is that you're interested in. And this shows me the total number of statements at the moment. But I might just be interested in the total number of leads recently. See that being useful for this particular set. So I'll change the filter here on the series to be created. So that means created a lead. And in the last 6 months, 65 leads have been created. Put it on a dashboard, and that's a number for the salespeople to work to push up. But equally, you could change that to be the number of calls they've made, or the number of people who've joined the company. We've had 10 people join in the last 6 months. The last one's going to be the pie chart. This is very similar to the bar chart, where we're using it to compare different sets of data. So let's change this to 6 months again. Grouping by hour at the moment, and not particularly useful. So we'll switch that to the statement.object. Again, we've got a lot of different objects, so not a very attractive graph. If we want to see what's the most popular course, we can put a filter on here. So we're only interested in completed verbs. And now we have only the statements where somebody has completed something. We've taken the object out of that. So the object will be the course for a completed statement. And each of these segments shows how many statements there were for each course. So more people have completed this after the call, successful follow-ups course, than have completed the sales performance defined course. Again, you don't just have to count statements. You can look at, for example, the max score. Not a particularly interesting graph because they're all pretty close. You can see that some of them not quite as high as others. Slightly better if we look at the raw results. Somebody's scored 100 on perfecting the pitch, where others have not. No one has quite managed to get 100 on any of the other courses. And then again, you've got the average, the minimum. Shows the average score. And that's it. That's all of the basic visualizations.
So Andrew, you've taken us through the basic ones there, and you made comment earlier on about journeys not being covered. I just wanted to remind everyone, I've dropped a link into the chat pod there. Journeys deserves kind of its own focus, so we do have a webinar coming up. I think it's in another 2 or 3 webinar time. It's not the next one, but we're going to be looking at specifically at journeys, if that's something that's interested you. Now, in this session, Andrew's talked us through creating the visualization. So they're there now. I like to think that they are now sat in the wings, set up, ready to make an appearance. And in the next session, Andrew's going to talk us through how you can bring them center stage, if you like, and you can create a dashboard and pull those visualizations into that dashboard. So that's what he's got lined up next. Yeah. Before I move to the final closing stages of this, I clearly want to ask anybody if there are any questions, anything where you've tried in your visualizations and something hasn't quite worked, or you've got any questions about how it would be best to visualize this sort of data or that sort of data. Feel free to drop it into the chat pod if you would, or indeed open your microphone up. Just give people a second or two to...
Can you hear me, Craig?
Can indeed.
Yeah.
Yep, is that xAPI?
I don't have a question about a specific visualization, but I was wondering if there is a document of some sort that summarizes so you've got statement.object there, for example, what that actually means or what it covers in Learning Locker. I think my main my main challenge is understanding what some of the options are, if you like. Just wondering if there's something that explains what each of the options covers.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. It's a hard question to answer because Learning Locker is very open in what you can put in. So I've just made up these statements. They're from a fictional course, from a fictional organization, and I've just put some fictional data in. So in the context of these statements, they mean a specific thing. but I could have exactly the same statement coming from a different source. It might mean something completely different. So it's mostly going to come from where you're getting your statements.
Does that apply even to, just seeing
the group
there, it says group by, and then it says statement object. Does that apply to even those options, or does it just apply to the verbs being used in the statement?
Yes. No, so if we have a look at a statement here, it's always going to have few standard parts. So it's always going to have an object, which is going to be this third piece here, what somebody's doing something to. So depending on how you filter your statements, that object is going to mean something different. So if I'm grouping by statement.object, if I've set the verb to be completed, then all of these objects are going to be courses. If I take completed off as the verb, then some of the objects are actually people. Some of them are leads that have been generated in the lead system. So it really depends on how you filtered the data down.
So it's a bit of trial and error from the sounds of it.
Yeah, there's going to be a bit of trial and error. There's going to be a bit of digging into the statements to have a look, or knowing what you've got in the store.
Sorry, I was just going to say,
so I can also
I was speaking about this on another a session that we were having, and I think one of the challenges as well is, I may do a visualization and think it's showing me what I wanted to show me, but maybe potentially misunderstanding what it is showing me, and it's actually incorrect, and not really knowing or understanding how to, if it is incorrect.
Yeah, that is a problem. I think that's going to be a problem with any reporting system, unless it's specifically dedicated to the platform. I know you've been using Curator, so you can generally trust that if Curator says that this is the number of people that have finished an object, that's going to be the right number. You can get that same number out of Learning Locker.
I don't want to hold everyone up, but just for example, for Curator, if it says statement.object, that could be a course, an actual object as far as a piece of content, or a level. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so. There's other things you can do as well. I think the object can also be a comment if you're applying. Yeah, Curator produces a lot of statements.
Right, thanks, Andrew.
Options.
I think it's fair to say, Andrew, is it, that whilst people are building up their confidence in using Learning Locker and understanding how it works to generate the data or the visualization that they want, there's certainly the option for us, and when I say us, I'm possibly meaning you more than me, unless it was very simple, so maybe just quality assure and have a look at the statement of the visualization that they've built, sanity check that it is showing what they think it is showing, and I'm guessing that would be a big confidence booster for people to then take that same structure and apply it in other places. I'm guessing that's something it's something that we do now, isn't it? We take a quick look at people's visualizations and confirm.
Yeah, definitely. We're happy to jump in, take a look around and make sure that everything makes sense, or point people in generally the right direction. Or even if you've got a new source of data, which is not one of our products, happy to take a look at those statements and see if there's anything that you could find out on that data.
I'm just going to change the screen layout one final time, and I'm going to ask you if you'd be so kind to just tell us what your key takeaway or takeaways are from this session. And you can do that by clicking on the T symbol on the left-hand side of the screen. On that menu pop-up bar, there's a capital T. Just click on that symbol, then click on the whiteboard itself, type in your takeaway, and then click off the whiteboard, and you'll find that it will appear, just like that one did there. Thank you, whoever that was, very quickly. Whilst you're putting those in, I'm just going to drag a few things on the screen that I think will be of interest to you. The first one that I've just dropped in, some links to some blog posts and articles and help centre material that you may be interested in taking a look at. Some of it is very Learning Locker specific, and some of it is more around data and analytics, which of course is, I guess, is an overarching consideration if you're using Learning Locker. And the second option that I've just dragged in, there's a couple of files there that you may be interested in. One of them is an overview of what we do here at HT2. The other one is the Learning Technology Manager's Guide to xAPI, which, as I said at the beginning, I think you've all possibly got that. But if you can't find a copy, then you can click on that now and you can download it from within the session itself. So we can see that
in the bottom left of the menu. I did that recently. Actually, inside. There's a link to the Help Center inside Learning Locker at the bottom left of the menu.
Oh, it's in there now. Oh, that's great. Oh, good, good. So you've got some contextual support once you're actually in Learning Locker as well to be able to dive you out into the Help Center. Thanks for reminding us, Andrew. So there's a good point. I've just moved it down to the bottom of the screen here, and this is something that Janet and I were speaking about the other day about the answer to your first question is very rarely the last question you're going to ask. It's very rarely the final answer you're going to get. It's often about asking questions and then digging into those answers, and then digging into those answers, and just digging down and down and down. It can be sometimes a little bit like going down a rabbit hole, to use an Alice in Wonderland phrase. So somebody's got a general idea about how it works. Brilliant. So you now know how to ask the next set of questions. Perfect. Still a lot to learn. I would agree. Whoever that wasn't me that typed that, but the emotion is the same. But excited about the possibilities posed by that Learning Locker enables. And somebody said it's time to get busy creating visualizations. Well, good luck wherever you are in that getting to grips with Learning Locker. Good luck with it. Remember, we're here to help. We are not a million miles away. Even though it might seem like it, we're not. We're at the end of a phone or a Skype call or a help center question or an email to me or something like that. Don't forget you've got the Learning Locker Help Center. Hopefully that will answer your questions directly. If it doesn't, if you've got general questions about Learning Locker rather than your specific site, please do ask them in the Help Center, because it will help to build up a library of frequently asked questions that other people will benefit. And of course, you'll benefit from the questions that they're asking in there as well. And Kathy, I know you've started doing that already, so I really appreciate that. Ladies, gents, we've just gone 14:30. Apologies for running over ever so slightly. I hope it hasn't impacted on your day. I'll stay around here until the last person is left, and I'll turn the lights off and lock the door. If you want to hang around and ask any questions, feel free to do so. Other than that, the recording will be sent to you later today, maybe tomorrow morning, but no later than tomorrow. Feel free to exit the session when you're done by clicking on that meeting button and then exiting the session. Thank you, Kathy, and a very late good evening to you and good night to you. You're very welcome, Andrew. Thank you. And I'm pleased it hit the mark again, Brian. Appreciate that. And of course, thank you to you, Andrew. Without you, this literally wouldn't have happened. So thanks to everybody.
Thanks everyone for coming.